The void of space stretched endlessly before the Argonaut, its metallic hull gleaming under the light of distant stars. Captain Zane Carter stood at the command deck, his weathered face illuminated by the glow of holographic displays. Outside the viewport, the battle raged on, flashes of weaponry punctuating the darkness as human and Tavrani vessels engaged in their deadly dance. "Status report," Zane commanded, his voice steady despite the chaos unfolding before him. "Shields at 60%, Captain," his first officer replied. "The Tavrani battlecruiser is circling back for another attack run." Zane's jaw tightened. For 20 years he had commanded vessels against the Tavrani Space Alliance, and for 20 years he had watched good soldiers die. The war had consumed his youth, his relationships, his capacity for anything resembling normal human connection. Now, at 45, all he knew was the cold reality of combat and the responsibility of command. "Evasive maneuvers," he ordered. "Bring us around to heading 740. Prepare to engage main cannons when they enter our firing arc." As the Argonaut banked sharply, alarms blared across the deck. Zane gripped the railing, maintaining his composure as the ship shuddered beneath him. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission," the communications officer called out. "It's unusual. Not on any Imperial or Tavrani frequency." Zane frowned. "Source. The signal appears to be coming from Rennox 4, the uninhabited planet in this sector. Put it through." The transmission was fragmented, distorted by interference, but what came through was unlike anything Zane had heard before. It wasn't a message, not precisely. Instead, it was a pattern, a sequence of pulses that seemed to follow some ancient mathematical principle. "Record everything," Zane ordered. "And get me Emperor Arminus's research division. We need an expert to analyze this." 3 days later, Dr. Elysia Dorne stepped onto the deck of the Argonaut, her travel case clutched tightly in one hand. At 32, she had already made a name for herself in the field of pre-imperial archaeology, specializing in the technological remnants of humanity's earliest ventures into deep space. She found Captain Carter exactly as he had been described to her, tall, imposing, with steel-gray eyes that seemed to assess and categorize everything they saw. A soldier through and through, with the battle scars to prove it. "Dr. Dorne," he acknowledged with a curt nod. "Welcome aboard the Argonaut." "Captain," she replied, matching his formality. "I understand you've intercepted something interesting." Without preamble, Zane led her to the ship's research bay, where the recorded transmission played on a loop. Elysia's eyes widened as she listened, her fingers instinctively reaching for the data pad at her side. "This is incredible," she breathed, already making notes. "The pattern, it's similar to inscriptions I found on artifacts in the Selam system last year. Ancient human colonies, predating the Empire by at least 1,000 years. And what would such a signal be doing on an uninhabited planet?" Zane asked. Elysia's eyes met his, bright with excitement. "That's what we need to find out, Captain. This could be the discovery of a lifetime." Zane's expression remained neutral, but something in his posture shifted. "Or it could be a Tavrani trap." "Either way," Elysia countered, "we need to investigate. And quickly, before the Tavrani pick up on it too." The descent to Rennox 4 was turbulent, the small shuttle buffeted by the planet's unpredictable atmosphere. Zane piloted skillfully, while Elysia monitored the strengthening signal, directing him toward its source. They landed in a vast, barren valley flanked by towering cliff faces. The air was thin but breathable, the landscape desolate save for the occasional scrub vegetation clinging stubbornly to life. "The signal's coming from within that mountain range," Elysia said, pointing to a jagged formation in the distance. "About 3 kilometers north." Zane checked his sidearm and surveyed their surroundings. "Stay close. We don't know what we're walking into." As they trekked across the alien terrain, Elysia found herself studying the captain. His movements were efficient, economical, a man who wasted nothing, not even motion. Yet there was something else there, a weight he carried beyond the physical burdens of his equipment. "How long have you been in the Imperial fleet?" she asked, breaking the silence. 23 years, he replied without looking back. "Family." A pause. None to speak of. Elysia nodded, though he couldn't see it. The war has taken much from all of us. This time, Zane did glance back, something unreadable flickering across his features. What about you, Doctor? What drove you to study dead civilizations instead of living among the current one? I believe we can learn from the past, she said simply. Especially from those who came before us and vanished. Maybe if we understand what destroyed them, we can avoid the same fate. Before Zane could respond, the scanner in Elysia's hand emitted a sharp tone. We're close, she said, quickening her pace. Just beyond that ridge. They climbed in silence, and when they reached the top, both stopped in unison. Before them stretched not natural formation, but ruins, the unmistakable geometric precision of ancient human architecture, half buried by time and geological shifts. Impossible, Zane murmured. The Empire's records show this planet was never colonized. Not by the Empire, Elysia corrected, already moving toward the ruins. But clearly, someone was here before. The entrance was partially collapsed, but they managed to slip through into a vast chamber that seemed to hum with dormant energy. Elysia's scanner led them deeper, through corridors carved with symbols similar to those in the transmission. These markings, she explained as they walked, they're part of a mathematical language used by the progenitors, the humans who first ventured beyond our original solar system. Most of their colonies were thought to have been destroyed in the Fracture Wars, thousands of years ago. They reached a sealed door, its surface etched with concentric circles and angular script. Elysia ran her fingers over the markings, her expression one of reverence. What does it say? Zane asked, his voice softer than she had heard it before. Beyond lies both salvation and destruction. Choose wisely, she translated. Then, finding a recessed panel, she pressed her palm against it. The door slid open with a hiss of ancient mechanisms coming to life, revealing a chamber bathed in soft blue light. At its center floated a crystalline structure, geometric and perfect, pulsing with energy that seemed to bend the very fabric of reality around it. The Nexus, Elysia whispered, her voice filled with awe. I've read theories about it, but most historians considered it a myth. What exactly is it? Zane asked, unconsciously placing himself between Elysia and the artifact. A weapon, potentially. But also so much more. According to the fragments of progenitor texts I've studied, the Nexus was a device capable of manipulating space-time itself. It could create fractures in reality, tears that could swallow entire fleets, or even stars. Zane's tactical mind immediately grasped the implications. If the Empire had control of such a weapon, we could end the war with the Tavrani, Elysia finished. But Captain, the texts also warned that the Nexus was what ultimately destroyed the progenitors. They couldn't control it fully. Their discussion was interrupted by a distant explosion that shook the ancient structure, sending dust cascading from the ceiling. Tavrani, Zane said grimly, checking his communications device. They must have followed our shuttle's energy signature. My crew reports multiple landing crafts approaching. Elysia looked back at the Nexus, her mind racing. We need to secure this. If the Tavrani get their hands on it, it agreed. Can it be moved? She shook her head. Not without proper containment. But I might be able to activate its defensive protocols if they still function after all this time. Another explosion, closer now. The sound of distant weapons fire echoed through the ruins. Do it, Zane ordered, drawing his weapon. I'll hold them off as long as I can. As Elysia worked frantically with the ancient technology, Zane took position at the chamber entrance. The sounds of battle grew louder, his crew fighting valiantly against the Tavrani forces outside. His communicator crackled. Captain, we're outnumbered 3-1. Cannot hold position much longer. Fall back to the shuttle, Zane commanded. Prepare for emergency departure. Sir, what about you and the doctor? Zane's gaze fell on Elysia, her hands moving deftly over the Nexus controls, her face illuminated by its ethereal glow. Something stirred within him, a feeling he had long since buried beneath years of warfare and loss. We'll find another way out, he said finally. That's an order, Commander. The battle drew closer. Zane could hear the distinctive whine of Tavrani energy weapons just outside the ruins now. He checked his weapons charge, enough for a fighting retreat, perhaps, but not much more. Elysia, he called, using her first name for the first time. We're running out of time. She didn't look up, her fingers continuing their dance across the ancient interface. Almost there. The system is recognizing my inputs, but it's asking for validation. A blast hit the wall nearby, sending fragments of stone flying. Zane ducked, then returned fire, downing the first Tavrani soldier to appear in the corridor. Whatever you're going to do it now, he shouted, continuing to fire as more enemies appeared. Elysia pressed her palm against a glowing panel, and the Nexus pulsed brightly in response. The air around them seemed to thicken, to bend, as if reality itself was being warped by the artifact's power. Zane, get back, she cried, just as a group of Tavrani soldiers breached the chamber. He dove toward her as the Nexus released a wave of energy that rippled outward like a stone dropped in still water. Where it touched the Tavrani, they simply unraveled, their molecular structure coming apart in a cascade of light. The wave continued outward, through the ruins and beyond, leaving Zane and Elysia untouched in its epicenter. When it finally dissipated, an eerie silence fell over the chamber. Zane rose slowly, helping Elysia to her feet. Their hands remained clasped for a moment longer than necessary, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. What did you do? He asked, surveying the empty space where their enemies had stood moments before. I didn't do anything, she replied, her voice trembling slightly. The Nexus recognized me, or rather, it recognized something in my genetic code. As if it was programmed to respond to specific human lineages. Zane's communicator buzzed. Captain, the Tavrani ships are retreating. Something just happened. A wave of energy from the planet's surface. It didn't affect our vessels, but the Tavrani craft in its path just disintegrated. Elysia stared at the Nexus, which now pulsed with a steady, calm rhythm. It's discriminating, she said quietly. It targets the Tavrani specifically. A weapon designed to fight an enemy that existed thousands of years ago, Zane mused, yet still effective against our current foe. The question is, Elysia said, are the Tavrani related to whatever destroyed the progenitors? Or is this just a coincidence of biology? Zane's tactical mind was already several steps ahead. Either way, we need to secure this site immediately. If we can harness this technology, we need to understand it first, Elysia interrupted. The progenitors were destroyed by their own creation, Captain. We should be cautious about following in their footsteps. Their eyes met, a silent battle of wills. Finally, Zane nodded. We'll do this your way, Doctor. For now. In the weeks that followed, the Argonaut maintained orbit around Rennox for as Elysia led a research team in studying the Nexus. An Imperial science vessel arrived, bringing additional specialists and equipment. Zane found himself drawn to the research bay more often than his duties strictly required, watching as Elysia worked tirelessly to unravel the secrets of the ancient technology. Her passion was infectious, her intelligence undeniable. One night, he found her alone, poring over translations of the progenitor text. You should rest, he said, placing a cup of synthesized coffee beside her. She looked up, offering a tired smile that affected him more than he cared to admit. So should you, Captain. Zane, he corrected, taking a seat across from her. I think we're past military formalities at this point. Her smile widened slightly. Zane, then. She gestured to the texts before her. I've made a breakthrough. The Nexus wasn't originally designed as a weapon. It was meant to be a shield, a protective barrier against a species the progenitors called the Void Walkers. And you think these Void Walkers might be the evolutionary ancestors of the Tavrani? Elysia nodded. The descriptions match in many ways. But more importantly, I found references to what the progenitors called the fracture, a catastrophic event where the Nexus was pushed beyond its design parameters. It created rifts in space-time that consumed entire star systems. Zane frowned. If the Empire attempts to weaponize the Nexus, we could face the same fate, Elysia finished. I've included warnings in my reports, but military command sees a potential game-changer in the war, Zane said grimly. and they're not likely to err on the side of caution. Their conversation was interrupted by the ship's alarm. Zane was on his feet instantly, already moving toward the bridge as the announcement came through: battle stations. Tavrani fleet detected entering the system. All hands prepare for combat. Elysia followed him, her research forgotten in the face of the immediate threat. On the bridge, the tactical display showed a Tavrani force larger than any Zane had encountered before, at least 30 vessels, including 3 dreadnoughts. "They've come for the Nexus," Elysia said, stating what everyone already knew. Zane took command, his voice steady as he issued orders. "Shields at maximum. Position us between the Tavrani fleet and the planet. Alert the science vessel to prepare for emergency departure." "The science vessel is reporting engine malfunctions," his first officer reported. "They cannot jump to hyperspace." Zane's expression hardened. "Then we stand and fight. All weapon systems ready." As the Argonaut moved into defensive position, Elysia touched Zane's arm. "There's another option," she said quietly. "I can return to the surface, use the Nexus directly." "Absolutely not," Zane replied without hesitation. "We don't know enough about how it works." "I know more than anyone else alive," she countered. "And if I don't try, we all die anyway. That fleet will overwhelm us in minutes." Their eyes locked, a silent communication passing between them. In that moment, Zane realized with perfect clarity that somewhere along the way, this brilliant, determined woman had become more to him than just a colleague or even a friend. "I'm going with you," he said finally. "Captain, the ship, Commander Vega, is perfectly capable of leading the defense," Zane cut in. "And I'm not letting you face this alone." Minutes later, they were aboard a shuttle, breaking atmosphere as the space battle erupted above them. The Argonaut and the science vessel engaged the Tavrani fleet, buying them precious time. The journey to the ruins felt longer this time, each moment weighted with the knowledge of what was at stake. When they finally reached the Nexus chamber, Elysia immediately went to work, her fingers flying over the ancient controls. "What's the plan?" Zane asked, keeping one eye on his tactical display, which showed the battle raging in orbit. "The Nexus can create a controlled fracture," she explained, "a localized distortion in spacetime that should affect only the Tavrani ships." "Should?" Elysia paused, meeting his gaze directly. "There are no guarantees, Zane. This technology is beyond anything we fully understand. There's a risk it could expand beyond our target, affecting our ships as well. Or worse." Zane absorbed this, then nodded. "What do you need from me?" "Help me calibrate the targeting array," she said, pointing to a secondary console. "And stay close." They worked together in focused silence, the sounds of battle occasionally breaking through their communicators. The Argonaut was taking heavy damage, its shields failing under the relentless Tavrani assault. "Ready," Elysia announced finally. "But Zane, there's something I didn't tell you. To create a fracture of this magnitude, the Nexus requires a guide. A consciousness to direct its energy." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "You're going to link with it directly?" She nodded. "It's the only way to ensure precision. Otherwise, the fracture could spread unchecked. The risk to you is necessary," she finished firmly. Before he could protest further, she placed her hands on the main interface. The Nexus responded immediately, tendrils of energy flowing up her arms, enveloping her in a cocoon of light. Zane watched helplessly as Elysia's body arched, her face contorted in concentration or pain, he couldn't tell which. The Nexus pulsed faster, brighter, until the entire chamber was bathed in its radiance. Above them, in the space around Rennox 4, reality began to tear. A fracture opened, a rent in the fabric of spacetime that swallowed Tavrani ships whole while leaving Imperial vessels untouched. The selective destruction was precise, surgical, guided by Elysia's consciousness merged with the ancient technology. But as the last Tavrani dreadnought disappeared into the void, Elysia's body began to falter. The energy connecting her to the Nexus flared erratically, and Zane could see she was losing control. "Elysia," he called, moving toward her despite the danger. "Let go." "It's done." Her eyes, glowing with the same blue light as the Nexus, turned to him. "I can't," she gasped. The connection, it's too strong. Without hesitation, Zane reached into the energy field, grasping Elysia's shoulders. Pain seared through him as the Nexus's power coursed into his body, but he held on, pulling her away from the interface with all his strength. For a moment, it seemed as though the Nexus would not release her. Then, with a surge of will he didn't know he possessed, Zane tore her free. They fell backward together as the energy field collapsed, the Nexus dimming to a subdued glow. Elysia lay unconscious in his arms, her breathing shallow but steady. Zane held her tightly, his heart pounding with an emotion he had believed himself incapable of feeling after so many years of war. "Don't you dare die on me," he whispered fiercely. "Not now. Not when I've just found something worth living for beyond this endless fight." Elysia awoke in the medical bay of the Argonaut 3 days later. Zane was at her side, looking as though he hadn't slept since their return. "The Tavrani?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "Destroyed or retreated," he replied. "Your fracture collapsed once you broke connection with the Nexus." She nodded weakly. "And the artifact?" "Secured. The Empire has established a permanent research base on Rennox 4. Under my command." Elysia's eyes widened. "You're staying?" "We're staying," he corrected. "If you want to. The Emperor was impressed enough with your work to appoint you head of research." A smile spread across her face. "So you're leaving the war behind?" Zane took her hand, his touch gentle but sure. "The war isn't over. But maybe we found a different way to fight it. A better way." "Together," she said softly. "Together," he agreed, and for the first time in 20 years of combat, Captain Zane Carter allowed himself to hope for a future beyond the battlefield, a future with the remarkable woman who had fractured not just space and time, but the walls he had built around his heart. As the Argonaut continued its orbit around Rennox 4, the Nexus pulsed steadily in its ancient chamber, a reminder of humanity's past and a beacon for its future. The war with the Tavrani would continue, but for now, in this moment, there was peace, and the promise of something more. In the months that followed, the research base on Rennox 4 became a hub of activity. Imperial scientists arrived daily, eager to study the progenitor technology under Elysia's guidance. Zane oversaw security, ensuring that the Nexus remained protected from both external threats and internal misuse. Their relationship deepened with each passing day, two souls finding unexpected connection amidst the remnants of an ancient civilization. They worked side by side, their complementary strengths forming a partnership that extended beyond the professional. Word came from the front lines: the Tavrani were regrouping, adapting their strategies in the wake of their defeat at Rennox 4. The war would continue, perhaps for years to come, but in the shadow of the Nexus, Zane and Elysia had discovered something the endless conflict had nearly extinguished: hope. Not just for victory, but for a future worth fighting for, one they would build together, regardless of what challenges lay ahead. As they stood at the edge of the research base one evening, watching twin moons rise over the alien landscape, Zane took Elysia's hand in his. "I never expected to find this," he admitted quietly. After so many years of nothing but war, Elysia leaned against him, her warmth a contrast to the cool night air. "Sometimes the most valuable discoveries are the ones we least expect." Above them, stars sparkled in the vastness of space, countless worlds, countless possibilities. And for two people who had found each other across the gulf of different lives and different callings, the greatest adventure was just beginning.